Okay, well, first of all, my family was here when it was Spain and when it was Mexico. So my grandmothers would tell me that the river crossed them. They used to live on my paternal side, they were the Spaniards. And my grandfather came here because of the railroads. He came from Laredo, but their family came in through Galveston. So they were here generations, and even my grandmother was born in 1900. So her grandfather and her great-grandfather fought at the Alamo with Jim Bowie. And he spoke Spanish, she told me. Anyway, but my paternal grandmother married an Indio from New Mexico. So he and his mother was from New Mexico too. They moved here and they had a rancho in southeast Texas. And and that was inherited from their grandparents, but it was taken away during the Revolution. So my grandfather, as a young boy, was raised on horses and caring for cattle, and so they were migrant workers from that when they took away when he was young. And so when he married, him and my grandmother and their children, their 7 children, were also migrant workers, and they had to leave school like my mother in the 5th grade to pick whatever cotton in Texas. They go to Michigan for tomatoes or whatever. Anyway, so they were all over the place, and my grandfather finally came here, my maternal grandfather, because of the packing houses, because he could butcher up the cattle. So we grew up right there on Weisenberger Street next to Target and Montgomery Plaza, and we had livestock there. Goats, sheep, we even had a horse. I didn't know how to ride a horse. I didn't even know a horse needed a saddle. We would just jump on from the porch, grab the mane, and it kept going until it knocked us off. And then we'd get up and do it again. And that's probably why I have arthritis now. But anyway, yes, that's where I grew up. And 1 block of 2 blocks of Weisenberger was like a barrio. And so the first block where we lived, the 2700 block, it had 4 generations of as a matter of fact, my father met my mother on that street. Their families were both there. And so my mother didn't want to date my father or have anything to do with him, and my father, because she said he was chocante, that he was a show-off and arrogant, and he was a Spaniard, and she was a Mexicana India. And I'm the only one in the family that's my generation that came out with the Indian features, with the high cheekbones and stuff. And all my brothers and sisters were white, so very Spaniard. And my father was like that, so my mother didn't want to date him and stuff. But finally, after many times and bringing a priest, she went out with him. And anyway, but that's how they got started, because I had 4 generations. My great-grandfather, I remember him being having a wake at my grandmother's house, because that's what they did. They didn't have a funeral home. They had the casket was in my grandmother's house. They'd empty all the sofas and everything, and they put the casket there. And that was really traumatic for me to see this, but yeah, but that was my great-grandfather. And that was my Mami Teresa, who was my maternal grandmother's father. They were Rosas.